The fall of Earth. The skies over New York City blazed with an unnatural red glow as the Zarkov invasion fleet descended through Earth's atmosphere. Massive warships, each the size of a small city, cast ominous shadows over the panicking populace below. Humanity's last line of defense, a cobbled-together assortment of fighter jets and hastily armed civilian aircraft, rose to meet the alien armada. Major Sarah Chen gripped the controls of her F-35 Lightning, sweat beading on her forehead as she led her squadron into the fray. "This is Archangel Leader to all units," she barked into her comms. "Engage at will. For Earth." A chorus of affirmatives crackled back as human fighters surged forward, unleashing a barrage of missiles at the alien vessels. But their weapons might as well have been firecrackers against the Zarkov's energy shields. Sickly green beams lanced out from the alien ships, vaporizing Earth's defenders by the dozens. Sarah banked hard, narrowly avoiding a blast that reduced her wingmen to atoms. "Damn it," she cursed, fighting back tears as she registered how quickly their forces were being decimated. This wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. On the ground, Dr. Elias Reeves watched the one-sided space battle from the roof of Tranquility Base, humanity's secret underground refuge beneath the lunar surface. His weathered face was grim as he turned to General Marcus Stone. "It's over," he said softly. "Earth is lost." Stone's jaw clenched as he nodded. "Send the signal. All remaining forces are to fall back to the evacuation points immediately. We need to get as many people off-world as we can." Reeves tapped commands into his tablet, broadcasting the retreat order on all channels. In New York, Sarah's heart sank as she received the transmission. "This is Archangel Leader," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "All units disengage and proceed to evac coordinates. I repeat, fall back immediately." As Sarah led the remnants of her squadron away from the losing battle, explosions bloomed across the surface of her homeworld. The Zarkov were methodically obliterating Earth's major cities and military installations. Tears streamed down her face as she piloted her fighter towards the secret spaceport outside of Denver. She knew she'd never see Earth as she remembered it again. In the weeks that followed, ragtag convoys of military and civilian spacecraft ferried as many humans as possible to Tranquility Base and other hidden outposts throughout the solar system. But it was only a tiny fraction of Earth's population. Billions perished as the Zarkov systematically eradicated all signs of human civilization from the planet's surface. 5 years later, Sarah stood at attention in one of Tranquility Base's cavernous hangars as General Stone addressed the assembled remnants of humanity's military forces. The dark circles under his eyes and the new streaks of gray in his hair were testament to the weight he carried. "Men and women of Earth's armed forces," Stone began, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "5 years ago, we suffered the greatest defeat in human history. Our homeworld was torn from us, billions of our people slaughtered. The Zarkov believe they have exterminated humanity, that we are no longer a threat." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Stone allowed himself a grim smile before continuing. "They are wrong. Though we are battered and few in number, the human spirit remains unbroken. Thanks to the brilliant work of Dr. Reeves and his team, we now possess technology that rivals, and in some cases surpasses, that of our enemy." On cue, Reeves stepped forward, gesturing to a sleek spacecraft behind him. Its hull seemed to shimmer and bend the light around it. "I present to you the Spectre-class stealth frigate," the scientist announced. Equipped with an experimental phase shift drive for FTL travel and a quantum camouflage system, it can slip past any Zarkov detection grid unnoticed. Excited whispers spread through the assembled troops. For the first time in years, Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. Stone raised his hand for silence. "Make no mistake, we are still vastly outnumbered and outgunned. But now we have the means to strike back from the shadows, to gather intelligence, to disrupt the enemy's operations, and ultimately, to reclaim our home." The general's eyes blazed with determination as he surveyed the troops. "It will be a long and dangerous road. Many of us will not live to see Earth's liberation. But I promise you this, humanity will have its revenge. We will make the Zarkoth rue the day they ever heard of Earth." A thunderous cheer erupted from the assembled soldiers. Sarah found herself shouting along with her comrades, 5 years of pent-up grief and rage pouring out. As the noise died down, Stone pointed to a group of officers, Sarah among them. As Sarah filed out of the hangar with the other chosen officers, her mind raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. After years of hiding and licking their wounds, they were finally taking the fight to the enemy. She silently vowed to make the Zarkoth pay for every human life they'd stolen. The resistance had begun. Seeds of rebellion. The briefing room was a hive of nervous energy as Sarah and the other 9 selected officers filed in. Dr. Reeves stood at the front, his hands clasped behind his back as he waited for everyone to settle. Once the room fell silent, he activated a holographic display showing a sprawling space station orbiting a ringed gas giant. "This," Reeves began, "is Outpost Zeta 9, one of the Zarkoth's primary research and development facilities. Our intelligence suggests they're working on a new weapon there, something that could tip the balance of power even further in their favor." Sarah leaned forward, studying the rotating hologram intently. "What kind of weapon?" she asked. Reeves shook his head. "We're not sure of the specifics, but intercepted communications hint at something called Project Nullifier. Whatever it is, we can't allow them to complete it." Captain Jack Harper, a grizzled veteran of the Mars colonies, spoke up. "So what's the plan, Doc? We go in guns blazing?" "Not quite," Reeves replied with a slight smile. He tapped a control, and the hologram zoomed in on a particular section of the station. "Your mission is to infiltrate the facility using our new stealth technology, gather all the data you can on Project Nullifier, and then destroy the research labs. We need to set their weapons development back by years, if possible." Lieutenant Zara Okoro, a brilliant young hacker from Nigeria, raised her hand. "What about their security systems? Even with stealth tech, we'll need to bypass their internal sensors and locked doors." Reeves nodded approvingly. "Excellent question, Lieutenant. That's where this comes in." He held up what looked like a simple wristband. "We call it the Phantom Key. It can interface with and override most Zarkoth computer systems. You'll each be equipped with one." As Reeves continued outlining the details of the mission, Sarah felt a mix of anticipation and dread building in her chest. This would be humanity's first major offensive action against the Zarkoth in 5 years. The stakes couldn't be higher. 2 weeks later, Sarah sat in the co-pilot's seat of the Spectre-class frigate christened Shadowdancer, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the viewscreen. Captain Harper, at the helm, broke the tense silence. 2 minutes to reversion," he announced. "Everyone ready back there?" A chorus of affirmatives came from the rest of the team in the ship's hold. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. "Ready as we'll ever be, Jack," she replied. The Shadowdancer dropped out of hyperspace, the gas giant, and its orbiting station suddenly looming large before them. Sarah held her breath, watching the sensor readouts for any sign they'd been detected. But the Zarkoth ships patrolling the area showed no reaction to their presence. "Quantum camouflage holding steady," Harper reported with a grin. "Those scaly bastards don't have a clue we're here." Sarah allowed herself a small smile as Harper skillfully piloted them towards a maintenance airlock on the station's outer hull. As they made their final approach, she stood and addressed the team. "All right, people, this is it," she said, her voice firm. "We go in fast and quiet. Zara, you're on point with the Phantom Key. Jack and I will take rear guard. Remember, our primary objective is intel on Project Nullifier. Anything else we can sabotage is a bonus." Questions? The assembled soldiers shook their heads, faces set with determination. Sarah nodded. "Then let's remind these aliens why they should fear humanity." The airlock cycled open, and the team slipped into the station like ghosts. Zara worked her magic with the Phantom Key, doors sliding open silently before them as they made their way deeper into the facility. They encountered a few Zarkoth workers and security drones, but the quantum camouflage kept them invisible as long as they moved carefully. Finally, they reached a heavily secured laboratory area. Zara's fingers flew over her wrist-mounted computer, interfacing with the locking mechanism. "I'm in," she whispered after a tense moment, "but I'm detecting multiple life signs inside. At least a dozen Zarkoth." Sarah's mind raced, weighing their options. They couldn't risk a firefight this deep in enemy territory. But they needed what was in that lab. An idea struck her. "Can you trigger a controlled atmosphere leak?" she asked Zara. "Something that would force an evacuation without raising too many alarms." Zara grinned. "Oh, I can do better than that." Her fingers danced across the holographic interface. "Initiating a localized gravity failure. Should make quite a mess in there." Moments later, they heard startled alien shouts from within the lab, followed by the sound of equipment crashing to the floor. The door slid open, and a group of very confused and disoriented Zarkoth scientists stumbled out, floating awkwardly as they tried to make sense of their sudden weightlessness. As soon as the last alien cleared the doorway, Sarah's team slipped inside. The lab was a chaos of floating equipment and data pads. 5 minutes, Sarah ordered. "Grab everything you can and plant the charges." The team worked with practiced efficiency, downloading data and planting explosives on key pieces of equipment. Sarah found herself at a central console, skimming through files as they transferred to her phantom key. Her eyes widened as she began to grasp the scope of Project Nullifier. "My God," she breathed. "They're developing a way to selectively disable advanced technology. They could cripple entire fleets, shut down planetary defense systems." "Time to go, Major," Harper called out. "Charges are set." Sarah nodded, disconnecting from the console. As they made their way back to the airlock, alarms began to blare throughout the station. Their luck had finally run out. "Double time, people," Sarah shouted as they rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of Zarkoth soldiers. The aliens' compound eyes widened in shock at the sight of humans on their station. What followed was a running battle through the corridors of Outpost Zeta 9. The team's advanced weaponry and the element of surprise gave them an edge, but the Zarkoth had numbers on their side. By the time they reached the Shadow Dancer, half the team was wounded, and Lieutenant Okoro was being carried, unconscious from a glancing hit by an alien energy weapon. As soon as they were aboard, Harper gunned the engines. The Shadow Dancer shot away from the station, quantum camouflage flickering as it struggled to mask their escape vector. Behind them, Outpost Zeta 9 erupted in a series of explosions as their charges detonated. Multiple hostiles in pursuit, the ship's AI reported calmly, detecting targeting locks. Harper's hands flew over the controls. "Hang on to something," he growled. "This is gonna get bumpy." What followed was a harrowing chase through the rings of the gas giant, the Shadow Dancer weaving between chunks of ice and rock as Zarkoth fighters unleashed a barrage of energy weapons fire. Sarah found herself holding her breath, knuckles white, as she gripped her seat. Finally, after what felt like hours but was really only minutes, they cleared the planetary system. Harper punched the coordinates for their rendezvous point, and the swirling vortex of hyperspace enveloped them. The tension in the ship slowly ebbed as the realization sank in. They'd done it. They'd struck a meaningful blow against the Zarkoth, and escaped with invaluable intelligence. As Sarah began treating the wounded, she allowed herself a small smile. This was just the beginning. Humanity was back in the fight, and the Zarkoth would soon learn to fear the shadows. The first strike. The mood in Tranquility Base's war room was electric as Sarah and her team presented their findings from the raid on Outpost Zeta 9. General Stone's eyes gleamed with a mixture of pride and fierce determination as he reviewed the stolen data on Project Nullifier. "Outstanding work, all of you," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "This intelligence is exactly what we needed. Not only have we set back their weapons research, but we now have insight into their next big strategic advantage. Dr. Reeves, who had been poring over the technical specifications, looked up with a mix of awe and concern. "The implications of this technology are staggering," he said. "If the Zarkov perfect it, they could render our ships and defenses useless with the flip of a switch." "Then we make sure they don't perfect it," Sarah stated firmly. "What's our next move, Stir?" Stone's face hardened as he pulled up a galactic map on the holodisplay. "We've identified the location of their primary research hub for Project Nullifier," he said, highlighting a heavily fortified world near the core of Zarkov space. "Planet designation: Korax Prime. This is where we strike next." A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembled officers. Attacking so deep in enemy territory seemed like suicide, but Sarah felt a surge of excitement. This was the kind of bold action they needed to take if they ever hoped to truly challenge the Zarkov. Over the next month, plans were drawn up for what would be humanity's most daring operation yet. A small fleet of Spectre-class frigates was assembled, each crewed by the best and brightest Earth had left to offer. Their mission: to infiltrate Korax Prime's defenses, destroy the Nullifier research facilities, and escape before the Zarkov knew what hit them. Sarah found herself in command of the lead ship, christened the Nemesis. As she stood on the bridge, watching her crew make final preparations for the jump to Zarkov space, she felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. So much depended on the success of this mission. "All ships report ready, Major," her XO, Lieutenant Commander Raj Patel, announced. Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath. "Send the signal. Initiate phase shift drives on my mark." She paused, looking around at the determined faces of her crew. 3, 2, 1, mark. The fleet vanished from lunar orbit in a shimmer of distorted spacetime. Moments later, they reappeared at the edge of the Korax system, their advanced stealth systems immediately engaging to mask their presence from Zarkov sensors. "Status report," Sarah barked as soon as they materialized. "Phase shift successful. All ships accounted for," Raj replied. "Stealth systems operational. No indication of detection by enemy forces." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "So far, so good. Proceed to Phase 2. Deploy the Ghosts." At her command, each frigate launched a swarm of stealth drones, each no larger than a human fist. These Ghosts, as they were called, were a marvel of Dr. Reeves' engineering, practically undetectable, capable of interfacing with Zarkov systems, and armed with potent EMP charges. As the Ghosts spread out across the Korax system, infiltrating defense satellites and patrol ships, Sarah's fleet began their approach to the planet itself. Korax Prime loomed before them, a rust-colored world bristling with Zarkov military installations. "Major," Raj called out, his voice tense. "We're picking up a massive energy spike from the planet's surface. It matches the theoretical output of a nullifier device." Sarah's blood ran cold. "They're testing it?" Now, before anyone could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. Ship systems flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. For a heart-stopping moment, Sarah feared they'd been detected and hit with the nullifier. But then emergency power kicked in, and she realized the truth was even worse. "Status report," she shouted. "Major, it's not just us," Raj replied, his face pale in the dim red emergency lighting. "The nullifier test, it knocked out power to half the planet and most of the orbital installations." Sarah's mind raced. This changed everything. But it also presented an opportunity. "Send the signal to all ships," she ordered. "Prepare for immediate surface assault. We're taking advantage of their blackout." What followed was chaos. As Zarkov forces scrambled to deal with the widespread power failure caused by their own weapon, the human fleet struck. Frigates dropped out of stealth, unleashing salvos of missiles at key military targets. Ground teams deployed via drop pods, their own tech shielded from the nullifier's effects. Sarah led a strike team to the heart of the nullifier research facility. They fought their way through confused and disorganized Zarkov defenders, many of whom seemed more concerned with the malfunctioning weapon than the human intruders. In the central lab, Sarah came face to face with the nullifier itself, a massive, pulsing orb of energy contained within a complex array of alien technology. She planted demolition charges while Raj downloaded every scrap of data they could access. As they fought their way back to the extraction point, Sarah couldn't help but feel a surge of fierce joy. This was more than just a raid. This was humanity announcing its return to the galactic stage. The human fleet regrouped at the edge of the system, battered but victorious. As they prepared to jump back to friendly space, Sarah watched the fireworks on Korux Prime through the viewscreen. The nullifier facility was a smoking crater, and fires raged across much of the planet's surface. "Send the message," she ordered, her voice filled with grim satisfaction. The comms officer nodded, transmitting a pre-recorded broadcast on all frequencies. General Stone's voice boomed across Zarkov communication channels. "To the Zarkov Empire. You believed humanity extinct, a footnote in your history of conquest. You were wrong. We have returned, and we will not rest until our homeworld is reclaimed and your tyranny is ended. This is only the beginning." As they jumped to safety, Sarah allowed herself a moment of hope. The Zarkov had been bloodied, their secret weapon destroyed. For the first time in years, the tide of war was turning. But she knew the real battle was just beginning. The Zarkov would retaliate with all their might, and humanity would need every ounce of courage and ingenuity to survive the coming storm. Turning the tide. The aftermath of the Korux Prime strike reverberated across the galaxy. The Zarkov, caught off guard by humanity's audacious attack, scrambled to shore up their defenses and hunt down the elusive human fleet. But the damage was done, not just to their military capabilities, but to their aura of invincibility. In the months that followed, Sarah and her fellow commanders led a series of hit-and-run attacks against Zarkov outposts and supply lines. The Spectre-class frigates proved their worth time and again, striking from the shadows and vanishing before the enemy could mount an effective response. But Sarah knew they couldn't keep playing guerrilla warfare forever. They needed a decisive victory, something to rally the scattered human colonies and potential alien allies to their cause. The opportunity came in the form of intelligence gathered during one of their raids, the location of the Zarkov's primary shipyard. Nexus Station, General Stone announced to the assembled War Council. The holographic display showed a massive space station shaped like a wheel, with massive construction bays extending from its hub. This is where the Zarkov build and refit the bulk of their fleet. If we can take it out, we'll cripple their ability to project power across the galaxy. Sarah studied the station's defenses, her mind already formulating strategies. "It's heavily guarded," she noted. "A direct assault would be suicide." Dr. Reeves stepped forward, a glint in his eye. "That's why we're not going to attack it," he said. "We're going to steal it." The plan was audacious, bordering on insane. Using data gathered from their previous encounters with Zarkov technology, Reeves and his team had developed a virus that could temporarily seize control of the station's systems. A small team would infiltrate Nexus Station and upload the virus, while the bulk of the human fleet lay in wait, ready to swoop in and secure the facility once its defenses were down. Sarah found herself leading the infiltration team, creeping through the bowels of Nexus Station with Raj and a handful of their best operatives. The station was a hive of activity, with thousands of Zarkov workers and soldiers going about their duties, oblivious to the human intruders in their midst. As they neared the central control hub, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. "We've been detected," Raj hissed, checking his wrist computer. "Security teams converging on our position." Sarah's mind raced. They were so close to their objective, but if they were caught now, the entire operation would be for nothing. She made a split-second decision. "Raj, take the team and get to the control room. Upload the virus at all costs. I'll draw them off." Before Raj could protest, Sarah burst from cover, firing her plasma rifle at the ceiling. "Hey, lizard brains," she shouted, her voice amplified by her suit's speakers. "Remember us? The extinct species." She took off running, a horde of enraged Zarkoth soldiers hot on her heels. Sarah led them on a wild chase through the station's corridors, using every trick and tactic she'd learned over years of guerrilla warfare to stay one step ahead. Just when it seemed her luck had run out, backed into a corner with Zarkoth closing in from all sides, the lights flickered. A wave of disorientation swept through the alien soldiers as the artificial gravity shifted. Sarah grinned beneath her helmet. Raj had done it. "This is Patel." Raj's voice crackled over the comm. "Virus uploaded. Station control is ours. For now. Better hurry, Major. We've got company up here." Sarah didn't need to be told twice. She fought her way back to the control hub, linking up with what remained of her team. They barricaded themselves in, fending off waves of Zarkoth attackers as they worked to maintain control of the station's systems. Outside, the human fleet decloaked and engaged the surprised Zarkoth defenders. The battle for Nexus Station had begun in earnest. For hours, the fate of the operation hung in the balance. Sarah and her team held the control room by the skin of their teeth, while human and Zarkoth ships clashed in the space around the station. Slowly but surely, however, the tide began to turn. With control of Nexus Station's formidable defenses, the human fleet was able to tip the scales. Zarkoth ships found their systems scrambled by the station's powerful ECM suites, while precision strikes from commandeered weapon emplacements whittled down their numbers. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of combat, the last Zarkoth dreadnought turned tail and fled. A ragged cheer went up from the human forces as the realization sank in. They had done it. Nexus Station was theirs. The aftermath of the battle was a flurry of activity. Engineering teams swarmed over the captured station, working to purge any remaining Zarkoth control systems and repurpose its facilities for human use. The shipyards that had once churned out vessels of conquest would now produce ships of liberation. Sarah stood in the station's observation dome, gazing out at the stars. She felt a presence beside her and turned to see General Stone, his weathered face etched with a mix of pride and determination. "You've done it, Major," he said softly. "This victory, it changes everything." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing with the possibilities. "We can strike at the heart of their empire now," she said, "and we have the means to build a fleet that can stand toe-to-toe with theirs." Stone's expression hardened. "The Zarkoth won't take this lying down. They'll throw everything they have at us to reclaim Nexus Station." "Let them come," Sarah replied, her voice filled with steel. "We'll be ready." As if in response to her words, a proximity alert sounded. A ship had just dropped out of FTL nearby. But it wasn't Zarkoth. The sleek vessel's design was unfamiliar, but the message it broadcast was clear. "To the warriors of Earth, we have watched your struggle against the Zarkoth with great interest. Your victory here has proven your worth as allies. We offer our aid in your fight for freedom. The Galactic Concord stands with humanity." Sarah and Stone exchanged a look of cautious hope. The tide hadn't just turned, it had become a tsunami. The war for Earth's liberation was far from over, but for the first time in years, victory seemed within reach. As new allies arrived and plans were drawn up for the push towards Earth, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had come so far from those dark days of defeat and hiding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew that humanity would face them head-on, with the same resilience and determination that had brought them to this point. The final battle for Earth loomed on the horizon, and Sarah Chen intended to lead the charge home. Reclaiming Earth. The Nexus Station victory marked a turning point in the war against the Zarkoth. With the support of the Galactic Concord and the shipbuilding capabilities of the captured station, humanity's forces grew rapidly. Colonies that had long hidden from Zarkoth patrols now openly declared their allegiance to the resistance. The dream of reclaiming Earth, once a distant hope, was now within reach. But the Zarkoth Empire was far from defeated. Enraged by the loss of Nexus Station and the growing rebellion, they began a campaign of ruthless reprisals against any world suspected of aiding the humans. The conflict escalated, entire star systems becoming battlegrounds as the two sides clashed. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, commanding the newly christened HMS Avenger, a top-of-the-line battlecruiser built in the reclaimed shipyards of Nexus Station. As the human fleet pushed ever closer to the Sol system, the battles grew fiercer, the losses on both sides mounting. Finally, after months of hard-fought victories and costly setbacks, they stood on the threshold of their ultimate goal. The liberation of Earth was at hand. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Avenger, surrounded by a sea of stars and the assembled might of the human fleet. Hundreds of ships, from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts, awaited her command. The comm channels crackled with reports from their alien allies, each race contributing forces to the liberation of humanity's homeworld. Status report. Sarah barked, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Raj, now her XO on the Avenger, responded crisply. All ships report ready, Admiral. Zarkoth defensive fleet is holding position in high Earth orbit. Ground-based defenses are active and at full power. Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath. This was it. Everything they had fought for came down to this moment. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. Soldiers of Earth and honorable allies, she began, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. For 7 long years, our homeworld has suffered under the yoke of Zarkoth oppression. They thought they had broken us, wiped us from the face of the galaxy. But humanity does not break so easily. She paused, looking around at the determined faces of her bridge crew. Today, we take back what is ours. Today, we show the Zarkoth and the entire galaxy that humanity will never surrender, never stop fighting for our freedom, for Earth. A thunderous chorus of cheers echoed across the comm channels. Sarah allowed herself a small smile before turning to Raj. Send the signal. All ships, commence attack. The space around Earth erupted into chaos as the two fleets collided. Energy weapons lanced across the void, while swarms of fighters darted between capital ships like angry insects. The Avenger plunged into the heart of the battle, its advanced weapon systems wreaking havoc on Zarkoth formations. But the aliens fought with the desperation of those who knew defeat meant the end of their empire. Their defensive lines held firm, the skies above Earth awash with the fiery death of ships from both sides. Hours into the battle, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage, Sarah received an urgent transmission from Dr. Reeves back on Nexus Station. Admiral, we've detected a massive energy buildup on the far side of the moon, the scientist reported, his voice tense. It matches the signature of a nullifier device, but on a scale we've never seen before. Sarah's blood ran cold. If the Zarkoth had managed to salvage their superweapon technology, can you get me visuals? She demanded. The tactical display shifted, zooming in on a massive construction floating in lunar orbit. It looked like a giant cannon, easily the size of a small city. As they watched, arcs of energy began to crackle along its length. If that thing fires, it could knock out our entire fleet, Raj said, his face pale. Sarah's mind raced. They couldn't retreat, not when they were so close to victory, but a frontal assault on the nullifier would be suicide. Then, an idea struck her. Patch me through to Ghost Squadron, she ordered. Moments later, the gruff voice of Captain Jack Harper filled the bridge. Harper here. What do you need, Admiral? Jack, I've got a job for you and your Spectres. Think you can pull off one more impossible mission? Harper chuckled darkly. Just point us at the target, ma'am. Sarah quickly outlined her plan. While the main fleet kept the Zarkoth forces engaged, Ghost Squadron would use their stealth technology to slip past the enemy lines and infiltrate the nullifier weapon. Their objective: overload the device and turn it against its creators. It was a desperate gambit, but it was their only shot at breaking the stalemate. Sarah watched anxiously as Ghost Squadron signals winked out, the stealth ships vanishing from sensors as they began their approach. The minutes ticked by like hours as the battle raged on. The human fleet was taking heavy losses, and Sarah knew they couldn't hold out much longer. Just as she was about to order a tactical retreat, alarms blared across the bridge. Energy spike detected. Rad shouted, "The nullifier is powering up." Sarah gripped the arms of her command chair, her knuckles white. This was it. Either Harper had succeeded, or they were all about to be sitting ducks for the Zarkov to pick off. A blinding flash erupted from the lunar surface, and for a heart-stopping moment, Sarah feared they had failed. But then she realized the energy wave was spreading in the wrong direction, towards the Zarkov fleet. Across the battlefield, Zarkov ships began to drift powerless, their systems overloaded by the very weapon they had created to defeat humanity. A ragged cheer went up from the human forces as they realized what had happened. All ships pressed the attack, Sarah ordered, a fierce grin spreading across her face. Take out their capital ships while they're vulnerable. Prepare dropships for ground assault. The tide of battle shifted dramatically. With their fleet in disarray, the Zarkov were unable to prevent human forces from landing on Earth's surface. Sarah herself led one of the first waves, setting foot on her homeworld for the first time in 7 years. The ground war was brutal, but mercifully short. Many of the Zarkov occupation forces surrendered when they realized their leadership had abandoned them. By the time the dust settled, the alien banners that had flown over Earth's cities were torn down, replaced by the flag of a free humanity. Standing in the ruins of what had once been New York City, Sarah looked up at the sky. The signs of battle were still visible. Debris from destroyed ships burning up in the atmosphere like artificial shooting stars. But beyond that, she could see the first faint glimmers of a new dawn. Earth was free. Humanity had reclaimed its home. In the days that followed, the true scale of their victory became clear. The Galactic Empire, already strained by years of rebellion, collapsed in the wake of their defeat at Earth. Other subjugated races rose up, throwing off their oppressors. The Galactic Concord stepped in to help maintain order and assist in rebuilding efforts across former Zarkov space. For Sarah, the end of the war brought a mix of emotions: joy at their hard-won victory, sorrow for the billions lost, and a weariness born from years of constant battle. As she stood in the newly established headquarters of Earth's Defense Force, she found herself wondering what came next. A familiar voice interrupted her reverie. "Quite a few, isn't it?" She turned to see General Stone, now Supreme Commander Stone, approaching. Sarah nodded, gazing out at the city beyond. Amidst the rubble, new buildings were already rising, the resilience of humanity on full display. "We did it, sir," she said softly. "We actually did it." Stone placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thanks in no small part to you, Admiral Chen. Earth is free, and humanity is poised to take its place as a major power in the galaxy." He paused, his expression growing serious. "But our work isn't done. We have a planet to rebuild, an interstellar society to construct. We'll need leaders to guide us in this new era." Sarah met his gaze, understanding the unspoken question. Despite her weariness, she felt a familiar fire igniting within her, the same determination that had carried her through the darkest days of the war. "Whatever Earth needs, sir," she said firmly. "I'm ready." As the sun set on a liberated Earth, Sarah Chen looked to the stars with a mixture of hope and resolve. The war was over, but humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. And she intended to be at the forefront, helping to shape a future where her people would never again face extinction. The galaxy had learned a powerful lesson. Humanity was not to be underestimated, and Sarah would make damn sure they never forgot it.